Okay, so I'll be doing a presentation on ORKG for wind energy assessment. So who am I first? I am Zebaze Janice Anta. I am a PhD student at the University of Yaoundé 1 in the Department of Physics. So I'm working in the fields of renewable energy, tribology, and applied artificial intelligence. So we are trying to work on to solve the problem of energy supply in Cameroon, the particular case of Cameroon. Also, I am member of the Total group, which is a group specialized in neurosymbolic AI, where we aim at ameliorating and developing models which can be used in the fields of culture, food, and energy. Okay, so the presentation of today is going to follow this outline. If you had to change it. But first of all, I'm going to present the context in which I'm working, which is renewable energy. So we first of all have a problem that energy is required in several aspects, like in communication, in transport, in industries, and the need and demand for energy has been boosted this past decades due to an increasing population and development in technologies. So a good and consistent supply in energy in a given country is required for its economic growth and development, and is therefore a sign of economic development in that area. But for the past decades, the main source of energy has mainly been fossil fuels. Although its efficiency is very high, its impact on the environmental also is disastrous because it leads to the emission of greenhouse gases, climate change, all that, which is very bad. So there is like an urgency to switch to cleaner, sustainable, and renewable sources. Among these sources, we have solar, we have hydro, we have wind. Solar is derived from the sun, hydro is derived from water bodies where we have to tap them using dams. And what interests us is wind energy. So wind energy is contained in the kinetic energy of wind. And through wind turbines, it can be used to produce mechanical and electrical energy. But the limit with wind energy is that it is intermittent and stochastic in nature. But most developing countries have been using wind energy as a source of electricity, and we realize that most developing countries in the sub-Saharan region are not really implementing the wind resource, mostly because there is the lack of the technology in those areas, the scarcity of skilled labor, the lack of policies who is the implementation, and the absence of knowledge of the wind resource. So in order to tap this resource, that is to produce electricity from wind, we follow the following steps. That is, first of all, have to identify the site and collect data. We have to assess the availability of the resource in an area. That is, determine if the area has the strength of the wind in that area is enough or sufficient to generate electricity. Okay, so we have to assess the availability of the resource. That is, if the strength of them but what some of the problem that interests us here is the assessment of the resource. That is, you want to determine if the amount of energy available in an area is sufficient to generate electrical energy. So most of the time, wind energy, the data used to carry out this work is the data is collected at a given height, and if during analysis the potential comes out small, we can push the study to greater heights. And most of the time we do not usually have the data at the height we request, so we can make use of distribution that we suppose if the module at a given height very well, then we suppose that at the required height that we don't have data set, they'll be able to do the modeling perfectly. So the limits of these models are that as wind is stochastic as an intermittent, diverse speed regimes and the distributions may not only always fit into all that. So one of the main problems here is to choose the optimal distribution for a given location. So this was really kind of the context in which I am working. From this context, we define several research problems like the data set they use to carry out such studies, the identification of the wind energy potential, that is determining exactly the potential in the given in a given region, Weibull methods performance analysis, that is there is a given distribution which is Weibull, one of the most used distribution, and in order to evaluate its performance in a given site, you have to determine its parameters, and several methods are used to evaluate the parameters. So many studies are done to evaluate which method is suitable to evaluate its parameters. The same thing, we have wind speed frequency distributions, where we evaluate different distributions for a given site to know which distribution is suitable for a given site. There are also the wind turbine design characteristics, like what are the wind turbines that are considered for a given studies, what are their properties, and lastly, the performance analysis. That is, we evaluate the performance of given turbines in a given site, and we try to understand which turbine is suitable for a given location. So to tackle these different approaches, we decided to structure our work as follows. After we define our research problem as up, we define the properties for each one. I hope it was okay. We define the properties for each one. Like for the data set used in wind energy assessment, we define a template. On the template, there were several properties that we define, like the country where it is studied, the data source, where they take it from, the instrument they use to measure, the number of sites that were considered, etc. So these were the properties we used to define this particular research problem. So we did the same thing for the other ones, like wind speed distribution, what is the model that is used, the parameter estimation method, the goodness of it, etc. So coming back to the presentation, so after we define the properties, now the question was to search for papers under the specific topic, because the title of paper can sometimes be misleading on the information that you expect to find in the paper. So it's use ORKG ask, where I did a query like what are the distribution used in wind speed energy assessment, and sadly it's not. And from ORKG ask, it gave me a list of papers with answers from which I could like really select the papers which I think has the expected answer I am looking for. So after that, I will select the papers based from what I obtained on ORKG ask, and I extract the information that I'm looking for, that is the properties and all that. And lastly, I create the comparisons for each one. So for each is going to open. Okay, so like for the research problem on wind speed distribution performance analysis, yeah, I defined the standard development goals, the research topic actually is all of concerns Patrick. Okay, so the properties here I used here was like the different models we use, like have Rayleigh, Weibull, maximum entropy principle, mixture, gamma, Weibull, the parameter estimation method, that is the methods they use to estimate the parameters for each given distribution, the goodness of it, that is the goodness of it is like a metric we use to evaluate the performance of a given distribution based on the original data set we have. So after that, we also did a numerical analysis, that is we counted the number of distribution used and the number of goodness of fit used in each study to make like a visual study of that. And lastly, we collected the performance. That is, for each given specific site, the which distribution was best suited for the given site of the study. So this is the information we collected. So I have to note here that since it is part of my PhD work, it really helped me to do lots of the related work of my PhD work. And from the literature review, from the curation I did from ORKG, I also realized that there were not many AI distributions that were AI methods that were used to carry out this task of wind energy potential assessment. So the comparison helped me to know which type of distributions are commonly used, which ones are successful, and on which study. Also, there was the one on data sets, okay, like the data set in wind energy assessment in Africa. Like we collected all the data set, the country, the data source, the logical source, and this one comparison was very interesting because it can provide a guide for someone who is coming to the domain, the field, and is wondering like, okay, I want to assess the potential in my given area or where I stay, and how do I proceed? Yeah, and come and say this is the type of data we collect, or this is the information we collect to make such a study. Like I have to take into account the length of the study, which is very important because it reflects the quality of the data set along with the temporal resolution. You have to take into account that is the height at which the data was collected. Is the height at which the data was collected the same height at which the potential was evaluated? That is very important because for the data set we took as height at wind speed height, the height at which the data is collected. And for the for the identification of the power potential, I guess there we also took the height exactly at which the potential was evaluated. So throughout the study, it was the ORKG is a very interesting tool, very interesting tool, which simplifies a literature review, and the dynamic aspect of it is also very important since I can later on come and add contribution as time passes, and it was quite enjoyable. So I guess it is all from my presentation today. It is also 5 minutes.